Welcome to Lecture 4, Flaws of Our Memory. Our memory is not passive. Our memory is a construction of our brain. Our brains take all this information, process it, and put it together into a memory. When we look at memories, I want to look at 3 different memories to start out with. We're going to start out with short-term memory. What I'm going to do in just a moment is I'm going to flash some nonsense words up here. They will stay on the screen for about 5 seconds. As soon as they leave the screen, your goal is to open up your sheet of paper there and to write those words down. And we'll have 3 different slides up here for this one. Let's go with this one. Now take out your paper and write those words down. Here comes number 2. Now write those words down. Are you ready for number 3? This one's a little bit harder. You still have about 4 seconds. Go ahead and write those words down. Yeah, how'd you do? This is looking at our short-term memory. How long can you hold just these few nonsense words in your memory and process them and put them down on paper? The first one you probably got pretty good. But as we get more and more, it's harder to hold that into our short-term memory. Let's look at working memory. Working memory is the memory that we use on a regular basis, where you have to look at reality, drag something from your memory up, process it, do something, and put it back. This part is our working memory. What I'm doing here on working memory is I will show you 2 numbers. They'll stay up on the screen for approximately 2 seconds. Then as soon as they go away, take out your paper and pencil and write them down backwards. So put the second number first and the first number second. Here we go. Write them down backwards. Okay? One more time. Write them down backwards. One more time. Write them down backwards. Most of you probably did pretty good on that one. There was very little information to actually hold in your short-term memory. And we're very used to using our working memory. That was probably fairly easy for you. I also want to talk about, whoopsie daisy, I want to talk about our long-term memories. Talk about our long-term memories. We remember stuff. No surprise to you. We remember stuff from years and years and years ago. But much of that stuff we remember didn't actually happen, or didn't happen the way we remember it. Our memories are constructed. We have a tendency to believe that our memory problems are with recall, getting the memories back out of our brain again. But in reality, some memories never actually formed at all. You never had the memory to start with. And memories tend to degrade over time. They lose their details. You might remember the general gist of what happened, but you don't remember all of the specifics. And memories, they can fuse together, where 2 different memories fuse together and become one memory. And memories can entirely morph into something new, something that never actually happened. There's also something called flashbulb memories. These are very vivid and they're very long-lasting. They're typically have a very strong emotional content to them. They get reinforced just by the event itself, the flashbulb memories. We have confidence in our own memories. That I think what I remember is actually what happened. But your confidence in your memory is not related to the actual truth of your memory. In fact, it's just the other way around. Frequently, those memories that you're very, very confident at, this actually did occur, are the memories that are the least accurate. One of our memory problems is we have source amnesia. This is when you think to yourself, you know what? I heard this someplace, or I read this someplace, somebody told me this, I saw this someplace, but you can't remember where. This is source amnesia. And not only with source amnesia, we also have truth amnesia. That is, we can remember the claim, but we cannot remember whether that claim is actually true or false. And the more we hear that claim, the more likely we are to claim that it is true or to believe that is true. This is called truth bias, that we hear the same thing over and over again, and we have a strong tendency to think that that same thing we hear over and over again is true. We need to look at thematic memory as opposed to detailed memory. The thematic memory is you remember the overall feeling, you remember the general things that happened, but you don't remember all the little details. You know, this happens to me all the time. I'll go to a movie, and then a month from now I remember that I went to the movie, but I don't even remember what the movie was. I remember going, but I don't remember the details of it. We have a tendency to focus on the one stimuli, but we ignore all the other details. So if you have a memory of talking with somebody, having a nice conversation, but you forget all those little details. You have the memory of going to the movie, but you forget how much the movie costs. You forget aspects of the plot of the movie. We focus on one stimuli and we forget everything else. And a lot of that stuff that we forget, it bothers us, and so what we do is we alter the details. We change it around and we pretend that we remember, and frequently we pretend so well that we actually do believe that we remember. We invent and change these details to make the story a whole lot more emotional. Have you ever talked with a fisherman coming back talking about their fishing trip and the one that got away? How emotional those stories can be, and how how much of that story is actually reality, and how much is embellishment and bring in the emotion. We construct our memories according to our own personal stories. A real good example of this is the Jane Hill situation. Jane Hill was on site when President Kennedy was assassinated. This would be Jane Hill standing over right here in the corner. She was on site right there. And right away, she was interviewed. Law enforcement interviewed Jane Hill, and she pretty much said she saw nothing. But over the years, she changed her story and changed her story and changed her story until finally she was actually chasing somebody. And she's not making it up. She's not lying. Her memory has changed over the years. We have memory contamination. This is external events are coming in, you're processing the memory, and you're actually changing the memory. This memory contamination could be done very, very naively. Somebody could ask leading questions, and as they ask these leading questions, you in your mind start creating the memory around the questions that they ask. It could be done intentionally. Somebody could intentionally alter your memories. It's fairly easy to do. Memory contamination is typically not deliberate deception. I don't know when my memory has been contaminated. I'm not lying to somebody. I'm not deceiving somebody on purpose. It's that my memory has been altered. This is memory contamination. We have a tendency to make up details. Make up details, fill in the stories. This is called confabulation. It's not lying per se. because you don't realize that you're lying. You're just making things up to fill in those details. This happens frequently, very, very common. We don't like those gaps in our memories, and so we fill those gaps in, especially when somebody starts asking us questions about those gaps. We don't want to seem like, oh, I wasn't paying attention, I'm not smart enough, they're not going to like me, or I'm not going to seem consistent, and so we fill in these gaps. But it's not a conscious decision that we're doing when we fill in these gaps of memories. One real good example of this was the stolen radio study. And this study has been repeated many, many times with very, very similar results. The stolen radio study is get a crowded cafe and have several accomplices. And somebody in that cafe stands up and says, "He just stole my radio," or "Somebody stole my radio." And the accomplices say, "Yes, I saw somebody," and they start describing them. Then as the police come in and interview the other patrons, you find out that the other patrons also saw this person, also saw the thief, are able to describe the thief in the same way that those Confederates described a non-existing person. There was never a radio, there was never a thief, and yet all of these other patrons remember seeing a thief, remember seeing the radio. Your memories are significantly just as biased as everybody else's. Although we want to believe that our memories are correct, our memories are true, our memories are the way the world was. But your memories are just as distorted as everybody else's memories. The book, The Courage to Heal. This book probably caused more problems in our culture than any other piece of literature ever. The Courage to Heal was a self-help book, for the most part a self-help book. And it dealt with childhood sexual abuse. The premise of this book was basically, if you have certain symptoms, and the very generalized symptoms that most of the population actually has, chances are you were abused as a child. So symptoms might be like, I can't remember my childhood. I can't remember large sections of my childhood. Eating disorders, bulimia, anorexia, depression, generalized anxiety disorders. Many, many of the population have this. There's a real good chance if you cannot remember your childhood, it's quite simply because your childhood was boring. It was routine. And we have a tendency to not remember those boring, routine things. But this book's premise was, if you have these symptoms, chances are you were sexually abused, you were physically abused, and you might have even been ritualistically tortured in satanic fashions. And if you can't remember this, do this worksheet. Work out, step down and think about it. Imagine if you were abused, how would it have happened? Where would it have happened? Psychological counselors picked up on this and started following it along. Well, maybe this is why my clients are experiencing this, and they started following this along and actually created memories of people being abused. Created them. The abuse never ever occurred. There were many adults that were incarcerated because of the testimony of these false memories. We call this false memory syndrome. It is very easy to create memories in somebody. And this book had this national appeal to it, not only a self-help book that you can sit down at home and work through, but a book that counselors picked up and started using. Very, very powerful book for creating false memories. And many people were incarcerated because of the false memories that were created. This also falls into alien abduction syndrome. That if you have these certain symptoms, you were probably abducted by an alien. You were taken away and probes were put into you. And these stories have become so common in our culture that if you believe you were abducted by an alien, you know what sort of memories you should actually have. And the media and the culture actually works on creating these memories. And unfortunately, children are very, very susceptible to creating false memories. It's very easy to create false memories within children. So no matter how much faith that you have in your memory, very likely that a lot of your memories are inaccurate. Those events did not occur. Those events did not occur the way you think those events occurred. Your memory is just as flawed as my memory. My memory is just as flawed as all of your memories. In our next lecture, we're going to be looking at pattern recognition.